Hello, you're listening to Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, a weekly podcast designed to bring you snippets of encouragement to help you as you go about your day. I'm Jenny Guy, your host. Before we begin today, I have some questions for you. Do you sometimes feel overwhelmed by life and its problems? Do you think that you're going to pass out or faint because of that feeling? Have you ever heard of a fainting couch and smelling salts? I'm guessing that you're probably wondering how all of these questions are related, and more importantly, what do they have to do with you? Well, today we're going to look at fainting couches and smelling salts and see how they still relate to us now as we deal with the situations and those overwhelming feelings that life hands us. Let's get started. I like to poke around in antique shops and secondhand stores, usually not buying, just looking, seeing what pieces of furniture and knickknacks from bygone years are for sale. For example, there is an odd piece of 19th century furniture that I occasionally run across, the fainting couch. Similar to a daybed, the fainting couch is distinguished by having part of its back raised at one end. The raised end provides support for a faintee. For example, if you are in a room equipped with a fainting couch, then in your moment of need, you can be steered to it. There you can gracefully repose while in your faint, thereby preventing lying in an embarrassing heap on the floor. Accompanying the fainting couch are smelling salts. They are used to revive those who have fainted. A vial of the salts is held under the faintee's nose, and the strong aroma will shock the person back into consciousness. If a person feels a fainting spell coming on, then the smelling salts should be applied immediately. Doing so often cuts short or even prevents altogether the oncoming faint. Fainting couches and smelling salts came to mind recently when I was pondering two verses, one in the Old Testament and the other in the New. Both of these verses refer to fainting, but for different reasons. I'll talk about the Old Testament verse first. Psalm 27, verse 13 says, "I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." That was from the King James Version of the Bible. Now, for the sake of full disclosure, I must state that some new translations of that verse don't use the word faint. I like the King James, however, because faint paints such a clear image. Whenever I hear that word, I picture a person who is growing progressively weaker, perhaps stumbling as he or she tries to walk. I see someone whose strength is waning to the point where she or he finally passes out or faints. This was the situation in which David found himself when he wrote Psalm 27. He was tired and was in danger of growing weak and fainting. David felt this way because for many years he had been persecuted by his father-in-law, King Saul. Whenever David thought that Saul's hatred was finally beginning to end and that he was at last giving up on trying to kill David, then a new type of persecution would arise, and David would find himself running from Saul once more. I can't resist adding this side note. I think it might be safe to consider David as an early model for The Fugitive, a popular TV show in the 60s. The plot concerned the fictional Dr. Richard Kimball, who was unjustly accused and sentenced to die. The show was all about how Dr. Kimball escaped imprisonment, and each week in a new episode, he would run for his life from the authorities who were trying to recapture him. Anyway, back to my main point, Saul's relentless pursuit caused David to admit that he was growing tired and was about to give up, to faint. But David believed that one day Saul's persecution would end, that one day he would not only see, but would experience God's goodness. David's belief in God's blessings kicked in to revive and strengthen him before he gave up. In other words, David's confidence in God's goodness became his smelling salts, and he used them to keep from fainting. Now let's look at how the New Testament addresses this idea of giving up, of fainting. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 says, "And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not." While David's reason for almost fainting was caused by extremely difficult life circumstances, here the Apostle Paul is encouraging us to not grow tired of doing good deeds. He is encouraging us to continue being concerned about others and helping them. Encouragement like this is definitely needed when we have been working long and hard, and it seems like our efforts are unappreciated or undervalued. Are there any smelling salts for this situation that, like David, we can apply to ourselves before we faint? The answer is yes. We do have smelling salts that we can use. This time, though, the smelling salts take the form of remembering the principle of seed time and harvest time. Seeds turn into plants, and mature plants yield harvest. Generally, the harvest is much more than what was planted, but we have to participate in all of the growth phases to reap the harvest. We have to plant the seeds, then we have to water and weed and fertilize them. We have to watch over the plants as they grow and protect them from pests and disease. Finally, we can harvest the crop the seeds made, but only at the right time. We can't stop or faint at any point in the growth process before harvest time arrives, or else we won't have anything to reap. Paul is telling us that our good works are actually seeds that we are planting, and our seeds will, one day, yield a harvest. By teaching us this principle of seed time and harvest time, Paul is giving us our smelling salts. So, whether we are enduring harsh life circumstances that seem to have no end, or whether we're doing good works that appear to be unappreciated or undervalued, both the Old and New Testaments encourage us to remain strong, to not faint. In the verses we looked at today, the Bible gives us these promises. First, we will see God's goodness in the land of the living. And second, we will reap our harvest. Our confidence in these promises will keep us from fainting. Our belief in these truths is our smelling salts. I began today's episode with some questions, so as I close, I'll leave you with another one. Do you have your smelling salts ready? I hope you heard something today that has encouraged you and possibly given you something new to think about that will motivate or inspire you. If you would like a PDF copy of the show notes for this episode of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, visit my website at jguypublisher.com. New episodes are published each week on Wednesday. I hope you'll join me for another installment of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, be encouraged.